Paul Castellano was born into the streets of Brooklyn, where the city's rhythm shaped every boy who walked its sidewalks. Even as a child, he carried himself differently. Quiet, observant, and thoughtful, he didn't rush into situations. Instead, he watched the world carefully, noting patterns in human behavior and the subtle ways in which people revealed themselves. His neighborhood was alive with ordinary life and quiet whispers of power. Shopkeepers called out greetings. Children played in the streets. Men in suits passed, exchanging subtle nods and cautious glances. And Paul, even as a boy, absorbed it all. It was in this environment that the foundation for his extraordinary career was laid. He learned early that patience and observation were more valuable than force or noise, and that influence could often be exercised quietly, invisibly, and effectively. From a young age, Paul understood the value of organization, efficiency, and planning. He observed his family, neighbors, and others in positions of responsibility, taking note of what worked and what failed. Every small interaction taught him lessons about loyalty, trust, and strategy. Even in adolescence, he displayed a keen sense of discipline. He understood that timing, subtlety, and calculated decisions were more important than impulsive action. It was a lesson that would guide him throughout his life, shaping his approach to leadership and influence. Paul's first interactions with the Gambino family were quiet, understated, and deliberate. He didn't announce himself with bold gestures. He observed, assisted when appropriate, and learned the intricate rules that governed the family's inner workings. Through careful observation, he gained insight into loyalty, hierarchy, and subtle forms of influence. People noticed his reliability, his calm demeanor, and his ability to handle sensitive matters without attracting unnecessary attention. It was a slow, steady rise, built not on spectacle, but on trust, intelligence, and careful attention to detail. What set Paul apart from many of his contemporaries was his approach. While others relied on brute strength, intimidation, or impulsive decisions, Paul approached every challenge like a business problem. He analyzed risks, calculated outcomes, and carefully considered alliances. His decisions were informed by logic, foresight, and patience. He understood that influence and power were not about fear alone. They were about relationships, strategy, and consistent action. Even early on, people recognized his intellect, his discipline, and his ability to operate calmly under pressure. By the time Paul was fully involved in the Gambino family, he had established a reputation for careful judgment, strategic thinking, and steady leadership. He earned respect quietly, through reliability and insight rather than force. Allies trusted him, rivals acknowledged him, and even outsiders recognized his calm authority. It was clear that Paul Castellano was building something remarkable, a legacy of thoughtful, deliberate influence in a world often dominated by impulsive actions and loud gestures. By his 30s, Paul Castellano had begun to emerge as a central figure within the Gambino family. Unlike many leaders who relied on force or fear, Paul approached leadership with a business-like mindset. He believed that careful planning, negotiation, and understanding human behavior could achieve far more than aggression ever could. I remember observing him in meetings where tempers might have flared. Paul rarely raised his voice. He listened patiently, understood the underlying motivations, and then spoke with calm precision. His words often guided the conversation toward resolution, quietly establishing his authority. Paul's approach to leadership was rooted in strategy rather than intimidation. He understood that power was not merely about who could be the loudest or the strongest. True influence came from planning, foresight, and calculated action. I recall a dispute between two factions within the family. Where others would have escalated the situation, Paul observed, analyzed, and then subtly directed negotiations in a way that satisfied all parties. His intervention was calm and almost imperceptible, yet the result was lasting peace. It was a reminder that sometimes, the softest voice in the room carries the greatest authority. Paul's genius lay in his ability to blend criminal operations with a sense of corporate efficiency. He organized operations as a business, streamlining processes, managing personnel carefully, and ensuring that everyone understood their roles. People respected him not because they feared him, but because he made sense. His decisions were logical, his actions consistent, and his leadership predictable in the most reliable way. Even in a world filled with chaos, Paul created structure, clarity, and calm. Like many in his world, Paul maintained a form of double life. On one hand, he presented himself as a businessman, polished, calm, methodical. On the other, he navigated the complex hierarchy of the Gambino family, dealing with loyalty, strategy, and influence in a subtle, calculated manner. This duality required constant awareness and patience. Paul had to maintain appearances while simultaneously managing the intricate realities of power, and he did so with remarkable skill, balancing these two worlds effortlessly. Trust was central to Paul's influence. He cultivated loyalty not through fear or threats, but through reliability, consistency, and calm judgment. People knew they could count on him to act discreetly, to respect confidences, and to make decisions that were fair and strategic. This trust extended beyond immediate allies. Even those who weren't directly involved in his operations respected his integrity, his patience, and his thoughtful approach to leadership. Challenges were inevitable in Paul's world. Yet, unlike many who might respond impulsively or aggressively, he handled every difficulty with calm deliberation. I recall a tense negotiation involving multiple parties, each with conflicting interests. While others argued and raised their voices, Paul remained composed. He listened, absorbed information, and then offered solutions with subtle guidance. By the end, conflict was resolved almost unnoticed, leaving him as the quiet architect of stability. Paul Castellano understood the importance of perception. He presented himself as a polished, professional figure, measured, thoughtful, and deliberate. This image allowed him to operate freely, maintaining influence without unnecessary exposure. People underestimated him at times, believing him to be overly cautious or removed. Yet behind that calm exterior lay sharp intelligence, strategic skill, and a profound understanding of people and power. As Paul Castellano settled into leadership, he began consolidating power with a quiet, calculated approach. Unlike many who relied on overt displays of force, Paul strengthened the Gambino family through strategic relationships, careful delegation, and meticulous planning. I remember observing the way he coordinated operations. Everything seemed seamless, almost effortless. Each subordinate knew their role, each decision was considered, and each action executed with precision. It was a world where structure replaced chaos, and efficiency replaced impulsiveness. In this environment, Paul's calm leadership shone. Paul understood that alliances were the backbone of stability. He cultivated relationships both within and outside the family. He approached each connection with care, observing the subtle dynamics, noting who could be trusted, and determining how influence could be maximized without confrontation. Even conflicts were handled with subtle diplomacy. Where others might react aggressively, Paul preferred observation, negotiation, and strategic compromise. His ability to guide outcomes quietly reinforced his reputation as a calm, intelligent leader. Paul's genius was his business-like mindset. He treated operations with organization, analysis, and foresight. Profitability, efficiency, and clarity became central principles, allowing him to maintain control without constant intervention. I recall hearing stories of Paul reviewing plans meticulously, ensuring every detail was accounted for. His leadership style reflected the principles of a CEO: precise, calculated, and always observing outcomes before acting. Even rivals could recognize his methodical approach, noting how it separated him from impulsive or reactive leaders. Leadership in a complex environment brought inevitable challenges. Paul faced rivalries, internal disputes, and external pressures with remarkable composure. He rarely reacted emotionally. Instead, he observed, analyzed, and acted only when necessary. I remember a tense moment during negotiations with other factions. Voices were raised, tempers flared, yet Paul's calm presence allowed him to quietly guide discussions toward resolution. His influence was invisible yet absolute. Paul's reputation relied heavily on trust and reliability. Allies respected him because they knew he could handle delicate matters with discretion and fairness. Loyalty was earned, not demanded, and those who worked with him understood that he valued consistency and thoughtful judgment above all. Even people outside his immediate circle noticed his calm authority, often underestimating the quiet mastery with which he directed events. Paul Castellano maintained a double life, balancing the appearance of a businessman with the responsibilities of leading the Gambino family. In public, he was polished, measured, and professional. In private, he managed alliances, disputes, and strategy with subtlety and precision. This duality required constant vigilance, patience, and self-discipline. Yet he executed it with remarkable ease, navigating two worlds seamlessly. Perhaps the most important lesson from Paul's leadership was patience. He understood the value of waiting for the right moment to act, listening before speaking, and observing before making decisions. Impulsiveness was rarely rewarded, but careful strategy always was. Through this patience, Paul achieved influence without confrontation, respect without intimidation, and outcomes without chaos. By this stage, Paul Castellano's legacy was taking shape, not in dramatic displays of power, but in the quiet mastery of organization, strategy, and trust. He led with calm authority, guided decisions with subtle influence, and maintained stability where others might have faltered. Even those who did not fully understand his methods could sense the effectiveness of his leadership, the reliability of his judgment, and the patience that defined his every move. At the height of his influence, Paul Castellano led the Gambino family with a sense of calm authority that was almost unmatched. Unlike leaders who relied on fear, loud displays, or impulsive actions, Paul relied on observation, patience, and precise judgment. I remember sitting quietly, imagining the meetings he presided over. The discussions could have erupted into chaos, yet his presence, measured words, and thoughtful guidance turned potential conflict into resolution. It was a subtle mastery of leadership, where silence often spoke louder than action. Paul approached the family like a CEO approaching a corporation. Every operation was evaluated for efficiency, profitability, and sustainability. He delegated responsibilities carefully, ensuring that the right person handled each task. Even in a world that could seem chaotic, Paul brought structure. People respected his decisions because they were logical, considered, and fair. And in that fairness lay the foundation of loyalty, as those who worked with him understood that he valued consistency and integrity. Alliances were central to Paul's strategy. He cultivated relationships within the family and with outside contacts, always mindful of the long-term consequences of each decision. I remember one negotiation where tensions could have erupted. Voices were raised, stakes were high, yet Paul's calm guidance allowed all parties to find common ground. It was as though his presence alone created order where chaos threatened to dominate. Loyalty was not demanded, it was earned. And in this careful cultivation of trust, Paul solidified his influence. Paul's dual existence became almost seamless. In public, he appeared as a polished, disciplined businessman. Behind the scenes, he managed intricate family dynamics, disputes, and strategies that required careful discretion. This balancing act required immense focus and patience. Yet Paul maintained it with effortless grace, moving between worlds in a way that few could perceive, and even fewer could emulate. Pressure was constant in Paul's life, but even during tense situations, he remained calm, composed, and deliberate. He observed, considered, and acted with precision, never allowing emotion to dictate decisions. I often imagined him in moments of potential crisis, quietly analyzing, listening, and guiding outcomes without anyone realizing his influence. It was a mastery of subtlety and strategy, a reminder that true power often resides in restraint rather than spectacle. One of Paul Castellano's defining traits was patience. He knew when to wait, when to speak, and when to act. Impulsive decisions could have destroyed opportunities. Measured decisions created lasting influence. Through patience, he achieved stability, loyalty, and effective leadership without unnecessary conflict. And it is this lesson that resonates far beyond his world. That calm, deliberate action is often the most powerful force of all. Chapter 27. a quiet visionary. Though often underestimated, Paul was a visionary in his own way. He saw beyond the immediate, considering long-term outcomes and broader strategies. His calm demeanor, business approach, and careful observation allowed him to guide the family toward sustained influence and stability. I often reflected on how rare this type of leadership is, one that combines vision, patience, and subtle influence without the need for aggression or spectacle. By the height of his career, Paul Castellano had left a quiet but enduring mark. His leadership style, strategic, patient, and disciplined, created stability and loyalty within the Gambino family. Allies trusted him, rivals respected him, and his influence extended beyond what many could immediately perceive. It was not a legacy of noise or intimidation, but of calm, deliberate mastery, a testament to the power of patience, observation, and careful decision-making. As Paul Castellano grew older, his approach to life remained consistent, calm, deliberate, and thoughtful. Even amidst the complexities of leading the Gambino family, he never lost his focus on observation and careful planning. He understood that patience and strategy were more valuable than impulsive action. I often imagined him walking quietly through the streets of Brooklyn, the hum of the city around him, each step measured, each decision considered, moving through life with intentionality and grace. Paul's leadership relied not on fear, but on quiet influence. He guided decisions subtly, earned loyalty through consistency, and navigated difficult situations with calm authority. I recall moments where tensions could have erupted, yet Paul's presence alone brought stability. His decisions were rarely forceful or loud. They were precise, measured, and often invisible to those not paying attention. Through this, he taught a profound lesson: that influence does not require intimidation, can be quiet, thoughtful, and lasting. Even in a world often ruled by impulsive reactions, Paul treated life like a business. He organized operations efficiently, analyzed risks, and delegated tasks thoughtfully. Every action was intentional, every decision considered, and every outcome anticipated. It was a leadership style that combined intellect with subtlety. By treating human relationships and responsibilities as a carefully managed enterprise, he ensured stability and loyalty while maintaining discretion. Trust was central to Paul's success. People respected him because he was reliable, thoughtful, and fair. Loyalty was earned, not demanded, and those around him understood that he valued consistency above all. Even those outside his immediate circle could sense his authority, sometimes underestimating it, yet never ignoring its effect. This quiet respect became the foundation of his enduring influence. Paul Castellano exemplified the art of living two lives simultaneously. In public, he was a polished businessman, calm and composed. In private, he managed the intricate dynamics of the Gambino family with discretion and intelligence. Balancing these worlds required awareness, patience, and discipline. Yet Paul navigated them seamlessly, maintaining freedom of action while inspiring loyalty and confidence in equal measure. Paul's life offers lessons that extend beyond his world. Patience can achieve what force cannot. Observation is more powerful than impulsive action. Loyalty is earned through reliability and fairness, not intimidation. Strategic thinking ensures stability in a world of uncertainty. Calm influence often leaves a more lasting legacy than loud spectacle. Through these lessons, his story resonates not only as history but as guidance for anyone seeking thoughtful, deliberate action in complex situations. Even today, Paul Castellano is remembered not for dramatic acts or flashy displays of power, but for his calm mastery of strategy, observation, and leadership. He led quietly, guided subtly, and shaped outcomes with thoughtful precision. His influence was profound, yet often invisible to those who did not observe carefully. As we reflect on his life, we can appreciate the power of patience, discipline, and intelligence, the qualities that defined him as the business don of the Gambino Empire. As you listen to this story, imagine walking beside Paul Castellano. The streets of Brooklyn hum softly around you. The city breathes in quiet rhythm. You feel the calm patience, deliberate observation, and thoughtful presence that guided his life. Let these lessons settle in your mind. Patience, strategy, observation, and careful action. Allow the story to fade gently, leaving a sense of calm reflection and understanding. Sleep well, carrying with you the quiet strength and wisdom of a life led deliberately, thoughtfully, and with quiet mastery.